it's a little formal for me to read off this stuff. So who am I? How did I get here? My name is Robert Bryant. I've had the same job for 26 years, trying to help young people to be safe and successful in everything they do. Does that sound like a big job? Yeah, it's a big job. It's also impossible to do without help. And I'm always on this recruitment drive, trying to get more people to be part of the solution, especially young people, because they are the greatest untapped resource we've got. When we have young people helping young people, we're in great shape. So, with that in mind, 26 years ago when I got started on this job, I wasn't even working with kids, I was working with adults in a crisis facility. What does that look like? Homeless shelter, alcohol crisis site for the state of New Hampshire, 24-hour crisis hotline, domestic violence support, and suicide intervention. All those programs in one small house. And I had the night shift. You familiar with the night shift? It's just one person taking care of all those programs. Is that a lot of responsibility? Yep, I got paid $4.35 an hour. It was the best job I ever had. What made it good? It wasn't the money. It was the mission. I ended up finding that I was actually good at something too. I was on my third career. What's it like to be on your third career looking for a place to land? I figured I could probably do all right. And if you need more chairs, there's always the closet that has a lot of others. So, where I am is starting this job, making $4.35 an hour. What made it great wasn't the pay, it was the ability to connect with others in a way that I knew I could make a difference. I had a chance to work with a great team of coworkers. Best of all, I had great teachers. My teachers were clients. People coming through that door asking for help for the first time because somebody else thought it was a good idea, they were the ones who knew. And they were generous enough to teach me. My professor, too drunk to stand up, brought in by the cops the night before. In the morning, I've helped him through that first night of recovery. In the morning, he's got a message for me. He says, "Hey, thanks for your help, man. You're a little late. Want to make a difference? Go to work at the high school." So I listened to him. I went to work at Hartford High School. In the alternative program, there were 12 students in that program. 12 students who knew a lot more than I did about what was going on in town, and they weren't embarrassed about teaching me, weren't shy in the least. They said, "Don't waste your time with us, go to the middle school. That's where the problem starts." So I worked in 4 middle schools for a few years, and the middle schoolers said, "Hey, I got this friend in the elementary, I think you better be talking to him." So they sent me to the elementary, and then to Head Start. Working with a young man who got kicked out of Head Start because he was a little too rough for the program. What's the future look like for those guys if we don't help them? It's not good. So I had the privilege of working with this young man, getting him ready for kindergarten. And that was a long time ago. In fact, it was 13 years ago. And you know how it is. I've had this privilege of working in lots of sites. So most of my work now is with the adolescent population and young adults. And you think, you're not going back to Head Start again? But I'm back at Head Start. I had the privilege of working at Rivendell Academy. That's not a preschool, but it's attached to schools that are pre-K through grade 6. And I'm now working with little guys as well as the big guys. And what's great about that is we get to know them when they're little, and as they grow up, they grow with us. So they know they got people backing them up. So long and the short of it is, I've worked in 10 states, 250 sites. I work in schools, hospitals, treatment facilities, correctional centers, recreation, churches, wherever people have an interest in helping young people. So that's a little bit about me. I work for an organization called Second Growth. What do? We actually do a lot. There's not a whole lot of us, but we get a lot done. So we have a website which explains the broad sweep, but we work on substance abuse and violence primarily, and everything that's connected to that. We do prevention, intervention, and crisis response. Prevention is the talk in the school, or the talk that we're doing tonight. Intervention is the call in the middle of the night. And crisis response is when it's too late to help. And then we help the communities, and the families, and the people who are left behind. So that's the gig. That's a lot of territory to cover. So here we are on a Sunday night. And people say, "Why do you work on Sunday night?" Well, why not? Because this is an opportunity that doesn't have a lot of competition, unless you're a hardcore football fan. I remember running one of these on the Super Bowl Sunday, you know, and some people still showed up. Okay, what is Rising Above Risk, this series? Well, we have some sponsors. The Couch Family Foundation, Norwich Women's Club, Norwich Congregational Church. They've made it possible for me to be here tonight, and you made it possible for us to have a conversation by showing up. We're all in it together. So I'm just going to stay with the script. Adolescence. You know, I always tell kids, don't worry, adolescence is not a disease. But some people want a second opinion on that. You know, they think, why do they act this way? Well, fortunately, it's not an endless thing, this adolescence. It's pretty unpredictable, it's mysterious, it's magical, and it's maddening. There's times when you just say, why are they doing this to us? One thing for sure is a lot's going to change. Adolescence brings change to one life and everybody that's attached to that life. It's a big challenge for us. As we say, when anything can happen, everything is possible. That could be good, it could be bad. So I'm going to ask if you wouldn't mind joining me in an activity. I'm going to hand out 3x5 cards, and what I'd like you to do is put on one side your greatest hope for an adolescent you know, and the other side, your greatest fear. Hope, that she's happy and confident. Fear, drug use, suicide. Hope, solid, positive sense of self. Fear, unhappy sense of self, feeling not worthy of success, love, and happiness, leading to unhealthy choices. Hope, to discover ability to do things they didn't think they could do. Fear, failure. Hope, to believe in herself and not to fold to peer pressure. Fear, not making it through high school whole. Hope for strong intuition for the right actions. And fear, child will not have individual confidence to say no to things that are not right for them. Hope, steady, meaningful work and career. Fear, jail. Hope, my child will go to the Olympics. The fear is that he will die. Develop self-worth is the hope. Making poor choices is the fear. Hope, to be even-tempered and well-adjusted. The greatest fear is suicide. Greatest hope is that my son is secure in who he is. He feels that he can reach his dreams. The greatest fear is that he will die. Greatest hopes, become sober, graduate from college, find gratifying work. Greatest fear, jail, minimum wage job forever, fatal accident. Hope, to be clean of substances, leading to productive, happy life and contributing to society. Greatest fear is death. Hope, the greatest hope would be for the adolescent to know that I care and want to help. Greatest fear is there's no way out and they can't find help. Greatest hope, successful and happy in life. Greatest fear, not confide, become a substance user, leads to unhappiness and losing out on chances. Greatest hope, be comfortable with decisions where they come out and college and job choice. Greatest fear, physically or emotionally hurt, or is in an auto accident or injury. Being taken advantage of is the greatest fear, and the greatest hope is finding happiness and being less stressed. Greatest hope is finding success, and the greatest fear is silence and solitude. Greatest hope is the courage to go out in the world and live their dreams, and the greatest fear is addiction. Greatest hope maintains her sense of self, remains strong, continues to love life. Greatest fear becomes overwhelmed by all the transition and all of its new stressors. Greatest fear, pregnancy, drugs, getting caught up with things. Greatest hope, to be happy, fulfilled. Greatest hope, happiness and success, loving others, doing what she wants to make a living. And greatest fears, pregnancy, drugs, depression, no friends, self-loathing, and no future. Greatest hope is happiness. Greatest fear is imprisonment. Greatest hope is that he will discover his greatest strengths. Greatest fear is that he will not realize that he has those strengths. The greatest hope is that he will be okay with who he is on any given day. And the greatest fear is that he will feel life isn't just worth the trouble. Greatest hope is he will find peace and ease and comfort in his own skin to live a passionate, fulfilling, productive life full of love, laughter, opportunity for experience. And fear, he will suffer in self-abuse, addiction, depression. He will kill himself or live a miserable, painful life. It's a lot for us to handle. Think about our greatest hopes and our greatest fears. I like to say that fear and faith compete for the same place in your heart. You have to decide what's going to be the dominant one. Faith is the belief in something bigger than yourself, whatever that means. It could be friends, family, it could be a higher power, it could be God. It could be any one of the things that you lean on. And the great fear is that nothing is there except the things you're afraid of. So fear and faith competing. If we can help our young people to find some anchor in a belief and participate in something bigger than themselves, we're in better shape. So I take this lead of all these problems. We're going to cover some of them over the next few weeks. By no means are we trying to be the know-it-all, the comprehensive answer. I'm going to share some of the tools that I've used with the young people that I work with and the adults who care about them, and see if some of them make sense to you. Thank you for your cards. This is the fancy PowerPoint. Handful of help. Start out, life is the ultimate team sport. How do we get there? We try to help our kids get connected to everyone, everything. So with the kindergartners, I always start out with the smallest little girl in the class. And I have her come up to the front with me, and I stand side by side with her, me, the big guy, you know. And I say, who's the strongest? They always think it's me, but they have no idea. So side by side, I will grab her hand, she'll lean one way, and I'll lean the opposite way. And she'll keep me from falling over. That little girl. And they said, wow, that's amazing that she could do that. Each of us gives a handful of help to the other. When one lets go, we fall. We stand together, we fall apart. How much power is there in a handful of help? Now we teach how that little girl can be stronger than me. Friends, family, school or work, community, local resources. 5 people in 5 places to turn to for help. As parents, we always feel like it's all us, right? Oh, we've got to do it all for our kids. We can't do it. How much time do our kids spend somewhere else? Out of reach, out of touch? We wonder how they're doing. My daughter will be 21 in April. Where is she? What's she doing? Do you think I wonder every now and then? When she was a little girl, I worried all the time. That did not help her. Then she showed me on our first day of preschool, Dad, you can go now. It's like, that's in preschool. So you imagine where she is now. She doesn't really need me. If she needs help, I'm there. But she's got herself, and she's got a huge network of people who care about her. Friends, I ask her to start with that. 2 friends. You can turn to any time, night or day. Tell them the whole story about what's going on. These are the friends who have your back. Now, in adolescence, well, there's this big debate on when it begins and when it ends. I think there's some people I know in their 30s that are still trying to shut it down. And some kids that are 10 years old who are already deep in the game. Now, some of it has to do with biology, some of it has to do with circumstance, and some of it has to do with the roles that kids accept. They just jump right in. You know, there's some of those kids at 10 that would rule the world if we let them. They're growing up too fast. You gotta slow it down a little. Okay? So friends, 2 friends they can turn to anytime, night or day, call them on the phone, and when they call at 3 a.m., the friend on the other end says, "Are you okay? What do you need? How can I help?" If they've got that, we're in great shape. The friends help them in this promise to stay safe, sober, and sane. Is that a big commitment? We'll see. Now we go to family. 1 adult in the family system they can turn to for help. You want to think that your kids will come to you anytime? Do you have a big family? I know some people have big families, right? So when I was growing up, we had a big family. I had 4 sisters, 2 parents at home, aunts and uncles, grandparents, cousins. Everybody was there, but nobody was home. We had this interruption called alcoholism. On any given day, I wasn't sure what I had. Oh, but I knew I always had Aunt Betty. Aunt Betty lived down the street. She was the go-to. She was not a blood relative. She had no business being there. How did she get into our family? She was my grandmother's friend, right? Aunt Betty was the go-to when our family of origin wasn't healthy enough for us. She carried us during those times, okay? Friends, family, school. 1 adult in the school you can turn to for help. When you're 10 years old, it looks different than when you're in high school. When you're 10 years old, I think a lot of the 10-year-olds really trust a lot of people at school, but the older they get, the more they believe they're not supposed to do that anymore. So we go back historically to Columbine High School, Littleton, Colorado. Everybody knows that story. Long time ago now, some kids were having a rough life. They went to school and made a rough life for other people. People knew about it, they heard about it, they didn't know what to do. Some people didn't want to get involved. They didn't know who they could trust. So the tragedy happens. Bishop Brady High School, same year, only before. So we're talking 2 or 3 months before the Columbine incident, something happens at Brady. Bishop Brady High School, Concord, New Hampshire. Student comes to school with a gun, has 100 rounds of ammunition, has a hit list and a game plan. He's all set to go. You know the story? Why don't you know that story? You know the Columbine story. What happens? 1 student goes to 1 adult that they trust. They have 20 minutes left before the plan's supposed to kick in. They find the gun, ammunition, young man, everybody's alive today. Because 1 student had 1 adult that they trusted in an advisor-advisee system. I worked at Brady for 2 years after that, strengthening that system that was already in place. But fortunately, there was 1 adult that this student trusted enough to go to. So the importance of that at school is great. How about workplace? Do you know any teens that have jobs? What kind of places are they hired? Well, some work at Dan & Witt's. We can see Dan & Witt's from here, right? There's other places where we're looking for kids to be fully supported in the workplace. My dad was in the restaurant business. Anybody familiar with the restaurant business? Right. My dad was in the restaurant business, and he had this gig. This is like 1968, Washington, D.C. He's managing a chain of restaurants. He goes into the restaurant, and he finds that the dishwasher's done with his shift, but he's not going outside. He says, "Charlie, what's happening?" He says, "I can't go out there. They'll get me." He says, "What are you talking about?" He looks out, and there's a biker gang in the parking lot. So my dad, the Incredible Hulk, says, "I'll take care of that." And my dad walks out across the parking lot, and he pulls out his wallet. He's not paying him off. He opens up his wallet, and he flashes something. He was a volunteer. My dad was a volunteer for the Police Athletic League in New York City. And when he was done with his service there, they give him a miniature captain's badge. It looked like the real deal. From 50 yards, I mean, you could not tell. It was the blue and gold, and when he flashes that badge, he says, "Gentlemen, is there a problem here?" And they're like, "They're gone." He goes back in, and Charlie says, "What'd you do?" That's what a good boss does, right? You look out for your players, okay? Community. Community's the weak link. It's not home, it's not school, it's not work. It's where you belong to something bigger than yourself. Where is that? Music, sports, arts, drama, any place of worship, volunteer organizations of any kind, neighborhoods. It's where you belong to something bigger than yourself, and you got a role to play, so that if you don't show up, they go looking for you. Does that make sense? If you don't show up, they go looking for you. You got a role to play. Community, pretty important for us. And that's the weak link for a lot of our kids. They don't belong to something bigger than themselves. The sooner we can get them connected with a healthy community, the better. Local resources. Local, close to home, resources, people who can help. If your house is on fire, hopefully your kids are well trained and they call the fire department. I always call the fire department. I had this kind of sketchy experience this year. I live in Thetford. Anybody know Thetford? And I had to dial 911, but it was on off hours. And so it doesn't get the help that I need. So we're by the side of the road dealing with an accident. And I must not have said the right things because nobody showed up. And 45 minutes later, I called my neighbor Gary. And the fire department is there in 3 minutes. So sometimes 911 is not always the only place you got to go. So just to be advised. Okay, we got to teach our kids where to find help when they need it. All kinds of issues. Okay, we're good? I think I'm gonna follow the script, but I'm not sure. So now we go to what our kids need. This is a little thing called ripples. What do our kids need? When they jump in the water, it makes a big splash, right? What kind of splash are they making in the world? And you've got on your script, it's a little, I'm gonna get one so I'm walking right with you guys. Thank you. This is what I think every kid needs. Respect. Respect is big, but it's not just for yourself, it's for everybody and everything. It's how you treat yourself and everybody around you. Integrity. Integrity. We sometimes call it the I card, the integrity card. When you're walking through life and you do the right thing for the right reason at the right time, your integrity is intact. But if you haven't got that integrity, it makes it tough. And we say to act with honor is really a great thing. Patience. You familiar with video games? Anybody have high-speed access at your house to the internet? Okay, we're still in that zone where it hasn't arrived yet, fortunately. How fast are decisions being made? The idea that patience is a virtue, it's like, are you kidding me? How fast does it go? Life goes way too fast. So I call this the waiting game. If we teach our kids to be patient, where do we have to wait? Where do they have to wait in their lives? And how long do they have to wait for? And while they're waiting, what are they going to do? I've been to airports before. Ever flown before? Ever flown before during a rough patch of weather? I'm waiting in line for 2 hours to change my flight. And you get almost to the front of the line and they say, oh, airport's going to close down. So what do? Oh, well, I guess we have to wait, right? What else are we going to do? So being patient, on the next day, I watched someone in line, this long line of people needing to change flights, and there's a ticket agent who is doing her best. And I watched the guy in front of me totally shame her and blame her for everything that's wrong in the world. And could you just see her smiling through it like, it's okay. And I get my turn up in line and I say, I'm really sorry. And then she starts bawling, right? I'm sorry, you don't deserve to be treated that way. This is not your fault any more than it's my fault. Learning the waiting game, being patient with ourselves, being patient with others. Perfect is hard to get to, so the patience thing comes in handy. Perspective, looking for the long view of each moment. So it isn't just now or never. Perspective gives us the time and the distance to keep working at it. Love, to love and be loved, to give and be given to. It isn't enough that we love our kids, we have to teach them how to love others. Expression. Expression, communication is great. Fortunately, we have this thing called text messaging now. If I wanted to talk to my daughter, she says the only way you can talk to me is through a text message. Is that fair? I'm telling you, she's just like texting a mile a minute. The average person age, I think it's 14 to 17, texts how much? How many times? Over 100 times a day. So the preferred form of communication is this texting. Every message is divided into 3 parts, 55, 38, 7. 55% is body language, 38% is tone of voice, 7% is the choice of words. How much do you get in a text again? You're getting 7% of the message and you have to guess at the rest of it. So communication, eye to eye, face to face, not Facebook, FaceTime. Okay, last one, sharing. finding the balance of give and take. Right? So if we can teach our kids that, what's the ripple they leave behind? Everybody knows when they've been there because everybody feels better. You know, instead of these kids who arrive on the scene and they take up a lot of space and they're not really well versed in these things because nobody taught them these are the things that matter. This is, my wife says I should precede all remarks by saying, what you're about to hear is only my opinion. So if we can just go with this for now, this is my suggested little toolkit. Okay? Now, I'm gonna stay with this for a minute. Number 6, learning to fall. I grew up in a family that was perfect in every way on paper. You have one of those families too? Oh man, you know, my parents looked really good, except they had some things that didn't go well, but people didn't know about them. When I left home at 16, I'd already graduated from high school, I was all done, ready to hit the road. My dad had never gotten a flat tire my whole career as a kid in his house. When I left home, I got a flat tire almost immediately, and I felt like such a loser. And it was years before I realized my dad got flat tires too, but he just didn't talk about it. So I think one of the gifts we can give our kids is talk about it when we fall short. Let them know what we do to make things right. So martial arts, gymnastics, downhill skiing, you following me? Riding a bike. A good instructor teaches the same lesson to begin all 4. How to fall. Falling is part of the game. Learning to fall safely so you can get back up with grace is the first step in learning to fly. We okay with that? So when we're not just broadcasting to the world that we're making mistakes all the time. Occasionally we can make a mistake and our kids are wondering what we're going to do, and we share with them the process of making things right. Because nobody's perfect. Okay, setting limits in a loving way. This is a story called Don't Go to Hanover. Anybody from Hanover? Why do I tell this story? My daughter says, don't tell it. It has nothing to do with Hanover as much as it has to do with choices. So my wife and daughter are having this heated conversation. And my wife says, you can go to your friends, just don't go to Hanover. It's about the usage of a motor vehicle. Do you have any cars at your house? And this is sharing the car with the young driver. And so she knows the deal is she can visit her friend in Stratford, but she cannot go to Hanover. We'll see what happens. Now my wife goes to the driveway, and as my daughter's backing out, she says, and don't go to Hanover. I hear it. Man, the message is loud and clear. It's already been published, right? And then my wife comes in, and we're getting ready to go to Hanover. This doesn't seem fair, does it? And my wife says, where's my purse? I think it's in the car. She says, shucks, or something like that. And she calls over to the house in Stratford and says, is my daughter there? Oh no, they went to Hanover. Right? This is not good. They went to Hanover. So what'll happen? Do you think my wife is excited at this moment? She's very agitated, as we say. She says, let's find them. We're on the way to Hanover. Should I participate in this? So my wife is on the hunt, and being a good scout, I find the car. In Hanover, it's not that big of a place, right? I find the car in the likely suspect places, and she says, we've got the keys, we can take the car. And I said, I don't think that's fair. She said, I can get my purse out and we can take the car. I said, I'm not buying this one. So she says, well, let's find her then. Again, I am an accomplice in this. I say, I think they're at Yama's. And they are at Yama's. My wife goes in and brings the daughter out to scold her in public. And I think, this is not going good. And so I kind of step away. And, you know, after they're done, my wife says, come right home when you're done eating. All right? And then she says, let's go home, I have a headache. So we go home. Now we're back at the homestead. And my daughter's not home, it's 9 o'clock. Uh-oh. So my wife says, I'm going to bed. So I'm awake, I'm waiting for this, right? What happens? My daughter's not home at 9:15. What should I do? My daughter's not home at 9:30. What should I do? my daughter's not home at 9:45. Are you getting nervous yet? What's your suspicions? That she's doing fill in the blanks, right? At 10 minutes to 10, she opens the door. She's covered with mud, and she's crying. I could have been killed! You know what mud season is? So she hangs up the car in the road and walks the rest of the way. And, you know, it's like a mess. And so should I tell her, oh, by the way, you're grounded for life? No, I have to listen to her, walk her through that whole thing. She's safe now. She's secure. And we work on a deal so that we can negotiate with mom later. And it's a great thing because she knows that we care about her, and we have to remember, reminder, warning, consequence. Now that should be here. There we go. Loving limits. Without limits, we're in trouble. Reminder, warning, consequence. We talk about what the expectations are and issue a reminder. The warning is, if you don't follow this, there's going to be a consequence, and it's no surprise when that happens. So instead of just exploding all at once, this is a predictable path. Whenever I do this, I can expect that. And we talk about the contract before we get too far down the road. It's like in any sport. There's rules. You have to understand the game before you get started. You guys following me? Right. Thanks. Can you turn the page?
When do you give the rules?
When do you give the rules? We're about to do that. Benchmarks of good behavior next. He's going to put these right on the refrigerator. You might have to retype them because of the way it's formatted here. All right, but there's one paragraph before exercise 8, the last one. If a young person should find him or herself standing in court, there will be 3 critical pieces of information to demonstrate to the judge to earn a more favorable consequence. Does that sound polite or what? You're standing before the judge. He wants to know if you're sorry for what you did, working to make it right, not likely to reoffend. When I'm coaching kids that have been arrested, I tell them that every time. It never is the wrong thing to tell them. I'm not an attorney. I should not be giving them advice, but I give them this advice. Sorry for what happened, working to make it right, not likely to reoffend. You got to earn your way out of this. Okay? So, benchmarks of good behavior. The 7-day scorecard. I have done a lot of work on substance abuse recovery. I never have done a drug test with a young person because we do this instead. The benchmarks of good behavior also came out of working with a young man who was oppositional defiant disorder. You familiar with that? Oppositional defiant means they're looking for an opponent. Always trying to find somebody to argue with, and that's their main game. Everybody else is always wrong, and they're just very aggressive at this. So I gave him this 7-day scorecard every Friday. And these were the benchmarks that we were aiming for, but it really works for most of the kids we know. So, we're looking for the rules of the house. First one, show up, be on time, be on task, be where you should be when you should be there. Stay safe. Avoid all threats of harm to self, others, or personal property. Tell the truth. Every lie leads to another one. Trust is too valuable to trash. I don't want to do this as an embarrassing exercise, but have you ever lied before? Why do people lie? People lie when the truth is unacceptable. I have to deal with this a lot. And people lie because they're telling the truth in stages. Denial is the ability to tell the truth in stages as you feel safe enough to do so. So we have a lot of patience in this. We're working to tell the truth because once you tell the truth, then your trust fund starts to grow. And when that is in place, we're in better shape. Practice respect. Think before you speak or act. Keep talking, but watch your words. You're responsible for whatever you say, whatever you do, and whatever you turn your back on. Am I asking for too much? Whatever you say, whatever you do, whatever you turn your back on. You know what I mean? Whatever I turn my back on. If I know something is wrong and I don't deal with it. So I'll give you one from the great stories of the Highway Patrol. When I was younger, I was in North Carolina and I was buying antiques. I had been active in that business. I would go to North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania. All this was every month. So I'm on the border of Virginia and North Carolina buying antiques. It's 7:30 in the morning. And I'm on this little barn that's near a major road. It just means it's paved. It's not a major road. There's a long downhill grade, and there's log trucks coming down out of the hills, and they come through there pretty fast. There's a colt dancing in the road, and a mare that's out. It's not my horse. What should I do? It's not my horse. What do? The guy I'm dealing with says, that's not my horse. I said, well, sorry. So I stop dealing with him, and I go out to the road, and I get the horses in. And, you know, you can hear the trucks coming. We get the horses back in the fence. Who knows that I did that? Just one guy. And the horses, of course, they know. So I go back the next month, and people come up to me and say, are you the boy from Vermont? It's like, yeah, I'm already on the map there. Whenever I turn my back on, everybody knows that I did that. What's in it for me? I'm doing the right thing for the right reason, so whatever I turn my back on is part of my respect. Follow the rules, stay within the boundaries of lawful conduct at all times. Keep your promises. Honor commitments at home, school, or work. And I'd also add, and team. Avoid the trap of saving up unfinished business by completing your assignments one at a time. Take care of yourself. Adequate nutrition, sleep, exercise, and hygiene are all essential ingredients of the good life. Nutrition, 3 meals a day. High quality, balanced nutrition, not the breakfast of champions, which is Mountain Dew. How often do we see kids that are not eating breakfast? Does that happen? Not at your house, right? Everybody has breakfast. Not true. The only thing about blood sugar, it's not going steady. All night long you haven't eaten. You get a chance to turn it around at breakfast, you don't make a budge, you know, it's going down. Now we have kids at school. No breakfast, no lunch. Oh, I don't eat lunch at school. No, I don't like that stuff. If I hadn't eaten breakfast or lunch, I'd be incoherent by the afternoon. I'd also have a wicked headache. All right, so we teach 3 meals a day because those guys that haven't eaten breakfast or lunch, they come home and eat 3 meals at one sitting, and it spikes the blood sugar and they're off balance all the time. So we say 3 meals a day, better to have 5 small ones. Okay, so we're doing the right thing with food. How about sleep? 8 hours is a minimum. We have kids, and I work with the honors program at various schools. The honors program kids will tell you they sleep 6 hours or less because there's not enough time. Honors programs are great, but we have to teach them how to survive. We have to make sure that those kids can take care of themselves. Without sleep, we're dangerous. Okay? Exercise, 30 minutes of physical activity, and then hygiene. Take a shower and brush your teeth. All right, I'm going to keep going. Ask for help whenever you need it. Give back whenever you can. Everybody needs something, and everybody has something to give. Be aware of your own vulnerabilities. Stay mindful of the mood swings. Big feelings can push you off balance in a heartbeat. Doesn't mean you can't have big feelings. You just have to know what they are and what to do when they show up. Watch out for all or nothing, now or never thinking. Perfect is not possible, so reach for what's real. Take it easy. Know when it's time to step back and give it a rest. Those are my expectations. Those are the benchmarks of good behavior. And if you can do those things consistently throughout the week, you're in the Hall of Fame. Because, man, those are hard to do. But if we're the coaches, we're aiming for that. Those are reasonable things to ask for, reasonable things to expect. Why don't they do them all the time? Well, something gets in the way. What gets in the way? One of these feelings. Sabbath. Familiar with the word Sabbath? Anybody? Sabbath refers to a time of rest and reflection. And if I work at an Ivy League school, a sabbatical is what I get if I'm a good professor, and they give me time off to write a book. I do not work in one of those schools. Okay? Sabbath. Sad, angry, bored, broken, anxious, tired, hungry, hurt, or stressed. These are the feelings that knock us off balance. Everyone has vulnerabilities, no matter how strong you are, no matter how smart you are. Which one? Which one is your greatest vulnerability? So if I spend a little time trying to explain these, then I would like us to acknowledge what our vulnerabilities are. Sad, depressed, discouraged, down and out. Angry, ripping mad at the world, flipping out at your friends. Boredom. Boredom is a symptom of not being connected. You got time on your hands and nothing to do. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I told my mom every day, I'm bored out of my mind, there's nothing to do in this town. And the kids I know in West Fairleigh say, what are you talking about? Once I had an interest, there weren't enough hours in the day, but without an anchor, you're lost at sea. Broken hopes, broken promises, broken dreams. This is about betrayal and loss. Anxious is the fear of the fear. Anxious, that low-level feeling like something bad is going to happen any minute, and it follows you around. Tired, sleep deprived, wiped out. When they're little kids and they get cranky, what do we say? They need a nap. I proposed this in high school as having a nap lounge. Make sense? Because they get to school too early and some of them are like, they need a nap. They're getting cranky again. Hungry, food and mood, too much or not enough. Hurt, chronic pain, emotional and physical. And stressed, too much on their plate. Either they put too much on their plate or somebody else did. Now, can we manage these? I want to know what your vulnerabilities are. Which one of these feelings? Everybody's got one. I have kids that check all of them. And they say, fix that. And I say, one step at a time. We're going to start at the top and work our way down. Because by the time you get to the middle, you're already dealing with the bottom. Right? Okay? So, please, if you wouldn't mind just raising your hand on this one. You can probably guess which one is mine. Which is my greatest vulnerability? Tired. When I get tired, I get really dangerous. I make these gross errors in judgment. Another story from North Carolina. So I'm leaving North Carolina at the end of a long day, and I'm driving to Michigan. Is that a good time to start? No. So North Carolina, get on the interstate. Now North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio. You familiar with Ohio? It's one of those swing states. I'm at the top of Ohio at a T intersection called the Ohio Turnpike. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I have to decide, am I turning east or west to get to Michigan? I'm pretty tired. About the time I see the signs that say, welcome to Pittsburgh, I realize I probably should have taken a nap a long time ago. Okay, makes sense? When I get tired, I'm not at my best. Okay, how about you? We'll just see. How many people would say that sad is one that pulls them down, knocks them off balance? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Angry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bored. 2. Broken. 4. Anxious. That's why you came here. I'm telling you, I did this for 120 social workers, school social workers in Albuquerque, New Mexico. In the whole auditorium, I say, anxious, 120 hands. These are caring people, right? But remember, fear and faith. Let's keep working on it. Tired. Another big turnout on that one. Okay, hungry. 4. Hurt. 4. Stressed. Yep. So, if my strategy for helping you would be to understand and manage stress and work on these two, when we are stress-free and free of fear, does it help our kids? Absolutely, it's a gift. It's a gift to our kids. What do they want for their birthday? Stress-free, unanxious parents. Because our fears are a burden for them to carry. So we do our own work to free them up to do their own work. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. If it didn't, would you tell me? Let's keep going. Before we do, I don't think I have the next one on here. Think it through before you do. So, anybody, I'm going to do something to help you wake up a little. I'm going to clap my hands once, and I want you to clap your hands in response once, but as quickly as you can after you hear me. Okay? Can we try that? Understand what I'm asking for? Ready? Faster. Faster. Excellent. How much time between our claps? A nanosecond? I just learned that word. Nanosecond. Almost no time. That's how much time you spend thinking before doing it when you're running on impulse. Stimulus and response are the same thing. There is no intervention. You don't think it through before you do, you just do it. So, you ever played touch football before? Some people are like, yeah. Come on. I have 4 sisters, no brothers, right? My sisters know this. You have 2 people on each side. Somebody goes back to pass. The person is running out for the pass, and there's no lineman. And so you have to count Mississippis before you rush in. Familiar with that? Okay, just checking. Mississippis. I did this with a guy who was a rather large person who had played football at the higher levels, and I asked him to do Mississippis in front of a group of young men that knew that he had the power to do something otherwise. And so we counted 5 Mississippis. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. That's a long time to wait, isn't it? Before you just rush in. But if you can count your 5 Mississippis, we already broke the spell of impulse. We stopped for 5 seconds. And then we did it. During the 5 seconds, if you do some critical thinking, this thing, adolescence, you know, it's kind of a setup for the, you know, the brain development stuff. You guys familiar with brain development? 14 to 17, the brain is primed for pleasure. It will, the brain and body will experience pleasure at levels unsurpassed in the rest of your lifetime. 14 to 17, the green light is on for all behaviors we're trying to avoid. Right? Executive function shows up in the 20s. Why? This is just a total setup. So, executive function. I always thought, what a great name for a team business, you know? Executive function. The phone rings. These guys are hanging out in the basement. Yep, executive function. They're just having a great time. They're not thinking it through before they do. We're trying to teach them. This is a skill you can learn. Even if your brain is somewhere else, you can bring it back into the fold. Think it through before you do, okay? So, what are we thinking about during that time? We're gonna think about action and consequence. Special effects. I remember when the first Star Wars movie came out. Anybody old enough to remember that? I saw it 10 years after it came out for the first time, and I was like, wow! And kids are saying, what's wrong with you? Special effects is part of our culture now. There's this whole thing we do in movies that makes it look like life is not real. Okay? Special effects of every choice. Every time you do something, there's action and consequence. So, here's how it plays out. The special effects of every choice: physical, legal, emotional, academic, social, economic, and moral. Now, who's going to stop before you do something and say, hang on a minute, I've got to get out my please-em checklist? How's this going to impact us? If you think it through before you do, you're at the top of the game. You don't have to overthink it. You just consider the implications. Why is it a good idea to not? And you fill in the blanks. What do teens most likely want to do without thinking? Can you give me some examples? Impulse. What do they want to do without thinking? Drive fast. Great one. Perfect. What's that?
Pick up the drink.
Okay. Pick up the drink and drive fast. Can I just start with driving too fast? We have kids that have just gotten their driver's license, and they are getting pulled over for driving too fast already. Wow. Think it through before you do. They haven't been around long enough to know all the consequences of this, but I'm just trying to get them on board. Driving too fast will not affect your academics unless you get into an accident and have a traumatic brain injury, in which case it's going to be really tough to learn some things again. Will it have legal implications? That's the one they worry about. They worry about getting caught, and I say, no, that's not what I worry about. I worry about not getting caught. The consequences of getting caught is you get help. The consequences of not getting caught is you get hurt. Okay? So I won't labor away on this one. But when you're trying to think it through after a bad choice, this is a great little exercise. So what are we going to talk about? We are so unhappy with our child for doing something that we didn't think was a good idea that we just get out this and say, how'd it go for you? Oh, pretty good. Like, get out of town. What was going wrong? What were the implications for you? What did it take from you? What did it give to you? And we get to the end of this, they think it was a good choice and it's a bad one. They've got faulty data. And what we have to do is share our perspective based on where we're standing and where we've been. Does that make sense? Thank you. We have the heavy hitters. The heavy hitters are the ones that can't think it through because they are involved in this thing called the rush of risk. Were any of you risk takers when you were younger? People are raising their hands. And what kind of risk taking do we get into? If anybody ever plays sports, is that a risk? Ride a bicycle, skiing, things like that, those are a risk. My grandfather would not let me ski because he thought it would ruin my baseball career. Like I got into the game in the 9th inning as a pinch runner. He thought it would ruin my career. So I think he was just a little bit concerned. The rush of risk, what do our kids do? Here's how it goes. We do this a lot with our kids that are shoplifters. Shoplifting. Do you think that's a risky sport? The spark, the race, the trance, the crime, the crash. How does it begin? Spark, it's just an idea. But if you play with that idea long enough, it's going to start the fire. The spark is the idea, the race. After the idea warms up a little, it causes this adrenaline surge, and the race. We're off to the races. We're going way too fast. You get drunk on adrenaline after a while and end up in a trance state. You are no longer thinking. You're on automatic pilot. Then you just do it. That's the crime. And after the spell wears off, you have the crash. All risk-taking behavior that runs away with us, we need to stop and say, don't play with fire. If it's a bad idea, don't go with it. Because dangerous stuff and stuff we're not supposed to do is always exciting. You guys getting some recognition that you've thought this in your own mind before? Okay? Well, if you're not coming clean on this, we'll have to talk about trashy behavior. Trash thinking becomes trash talking becomes trash doing. Okay? If you had any idea how much trash there is in my head, you would be shocked. Difference between me and your kids is I have a recycling program. Trash in, trash out. Think about this, trashy behavior, just thinking. It's just a thought. It depends how long I hang on to that thought and what I do with it. So I take that thought and I recognize it as trash and I recycle it. It's not for me. If I think about it long enough, I'll be talking about it. Walk down the hall in any high school in North America, even those schools that are supposed to be squeaky clean, and listen to the trash talk that's going on. They're talking about the things they're not supposed to talk about because, man, it makes them feel powerful. Talk about it long enough, you're going to be doing it. Trash thinking becomes trash talking becomes trash doing. So when we see the thinking going on, can we see that? No. It's usually when it starts to get discussed. We're looking for the signs that there's too much trash going on in the head. Okay? Follow me? We're on number 14 now. I have them out of sequence, so I'll just say higher self, higher purpose, higher power. Kids ask us all kinds of questions about kind of spirit and things like that. And like, we work in public schools. Are we supposed to talk about faith-based stuff in public schools? No. When we talk about recovery, substance abuse recovery, when we talk about suicide, life and death issues, if I don't talk about spirit, I'm leaving them out. So I say, this is not about religion. Higher self, the behavior that you engage in for the right reason at the right time. Acting with honor. Higher self behavior, make sense? That's where we start. Higher self, higher purpose. Now you're doing for the greater good. When you're investing your choices and your actions in the greater good, higher power is along for the ride. You get to feel the blessings of what you've done as though there's this push behind you that lifts you up and keeps you strong. So, higher self, higher purpose, higher power, and that gets us to the big formula. Respect and responsibility equals reputation. Respect is how you treat yourself and everybody around you. Responsibility, we talked about it before. Whatever I say, whatever I do, whatever I turn my back on. Reputation, good one or bad one. Now, I have to say, I've worked in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine for 26 years. I've worked in lots of sites, and there are kids that think I'm following them around. Because I'll see a kid in Maine that I worked with in Vermont, and I'll say, what are you doing here? And you know, families move around, and eventually we bump into each other. So think about New England as a small town. Whatever you do, your reputation is going to get there before you do. A good reputation opens every door. A bad reputation nails it shut.